Elena Martinez had always been the type of person who acted before thinking when someone needed help. Working as a pediatric nurse at Seattle Children's Hospital, she had dedicated her life to caring for others, especially children. At 28, she lived alone in a small apartment near the hospital, her life revolving entirely around her patients and their families. On that crisp October morning, Elena was walking through Riverside Park on her way to work when she heard the terrified screams of a young boy. Without hesitation, she ran toward the sound and found 8-year-old Tommy Richardson trapped beneath a fallen tree branch near the playground. The boy's leg was pinned and he was crying in pain and fear. "It's okay, sweetheart. I'm here to help you," Elena said calmly, kneeling beside Tommy despite the sharp pain that shot through her own side. She had been dealing with a recurring injury from a car accident months earlier, but she pushed the discomfort aside. Unknown to Elena, Alexander King had been watching from his black SUV parked nearby. The wealthy businessman and single father had brought his own son to this very playground countless times. Alexander was known throughout the city as a powerful figure in real estate development, someone who commanded respect and fear in equal measure. People called him the king of Seattle's business world, and his reputation preceded him wherever he went. Alexander had noticed the elegant woman with dark hair rushing toward the emergency without a second thought for her own safety. He watched as she carefully assessed the situation, speaking soothingly to the frightened child while simultaneously calling 911 on her phone. "Tommy, I need you to stay very still for me," Elena instructed, her voice steady despite the growing pain in her abdomen. "Help is coming, but I'm going to try to lift this branch just enough for you to slide out. Can you be brave for me?" The branch was heavier than Elena had anticipated, and as she strained to lift it, something inside her gave way. A sharp, burning pain erupted in her side where an old surgical scar had been slowly healing. She felt something warm and wet spreading beneath her scrub top, but she couldn't stop now. Tommy needed her. With tremendous effort and a surge of adrenaline, Elena managed to lift the branch high enough for the boy to crawl free. Tommy scrambled away from the fallen wood, favoring his injured leg but otherwise able to move. Elena carefully lowered the branch back down, her hands trembling from both exertion and pain. "Are you hurt anywhere else?" she asked Tommy, quickly examining his leg. It appeared to be bruised and scraped, but not broken. The relief she felt was overwhelming. From his vehicle, Alexander watched this entire scene unfold. He had been about to get out and help when he saw how competently the woman was handling the situation. But something about her movements in those final moments caught his attention. She seemed to be favoring one side of her body, and when she stood up after helping Tommy, she swayed slightly, as if dizzy. The paramedics arrived within minutes, along with Tommy's frantic mother, Sarah Richardson, who had been searching the park when she heard the commotion. "Thank you so much," Sarah cried, embracing Elena carefully. "You saved my son. I don't know what would have happened if you hadn't been here." Elena smiled weakly, the pain in her side now becoming unbearable. "I'm just glad he's okay. Make sure the paramedics check his leg thoroughly." As the paramedics loaded Tommy into the ambulance for a precautionary trip to the hospital, Elena began walking away from the scene. She pressed her hand against her side, feeling the dampness that had spread across her shirt. She needed to get to the hospital herself, but she didn't want to cause a scene or take attention away from Tommy's care. Alexander made a split-second decision. He quietly exited his SUV and began following Elena at a distance. Something about her self-sacrificing nature intrigued him, and the way she had handled the emergency with such grace and competence was remarkable. But more than that, he was concerned. He had noticed her distress, even if she was trying to hide it. Elena made it about 2 blocks from the park before the pain became too intense to ignore. She leaned against a bus stop bench, her face pale and her breathing shallow. The wound from her previous surgery had definitely reopened, and she could feel blood seeping through her clothes. She pulled out her phone to call for help, but her hands were shaking so badly she could barely hold it. That's when she heard footsteps approaching. "Excuse me, are you all right?" came a deep, masculine voice. Elena looked up to see a tall, broad-shouldered man with dark hair and intense blue eyes. He was impeccably dressed in an expensive suit, and something about his presence commanded attention. This was clearly someone important, someone powerful. "I'm fine," Elena lied, trying to straighten up despite the pain. "Just catching my breath." Alexander studied her face carefully. Her complexion was growing paler by the moment, and he could see she was struggling to stay upright. "You helped that boy back there. That was incredibly brave." "Anyone would have done the same thing," Elena replied, though her voice was weaker now. "No," Alexander said seriously. "Not everyone would have, and certainly not everyone would have hidden their own injuries to make sure a child was safe." Elena's eyes widened in surprise. She hadn't realized anyone had been watching that closely. "I don't know what you mean." Alexander stepped closer, his expression growing more concerned. "You're hurt. Let me help you." Before Elena could protest further, her legs gave out beneath her. Alexander caught her just as she began to fall, his strong arms supporting her weight as consciousness started to slip away from her. "Stay with me," he said firmly, already pulling out his phone to call for emergency medical assistance. "What's your name?" "Elena," she whispered before everything went black. As Alexander held the unconscious woman who had risked her own well-being to save a stranger's child, he felt something he hadn't experienced in years. Here was someone who embodied everything he valued but rarely saw in his world of business dealings and superficial relationships. Elena Martinez had shown courage, selflessness, and genuine compassion, all while suffering in silence. When the second ambulance arrived, Alexander made sure Elena received immediate medical attention. He rode with her to Seattle General Hospital, claiming to be a witness who needed to provide a statement. In reality, he couldn't bring himself to leave her side. During the ride, as paramedics worked to stabilize Elena's condition, Alexander learned from her medical ID that she was a pediatric nurse. This explained her quick thinking and competent response to Tommy's emergency. It also made her actions even more remarkable in his eyes. At the hospital, Elena was rushed into emergency surgery to repair her reopened surgical site. Alexander found himself in the unusual position of waiting in a hospital corridor for news about a woman whose last name he had only just learned. Dr. Patricia Williams, the attending physician, eventually emerged to speak with him. "Are you family?" "Doctor," William asked. "No, I'm the one who found her after she collapsed," Alexander replied. "Is she going to be okay?" "She'll recover fully, but it was serious. She had significant internal bleeding from a previous surgical site that was still healing. If she had waited much longer to get help, the consequences could have been severe." Alexander felt relief wash over him, followed immediately by admiration for Elena's incredible strength. She had literally risked her life to save Tommy Richardson, and she had done it without hesitation. "She mentioned helping a child before she collapsed," Dr. Williams continued. "Do you know anything about that?" Alexander nodded. "She saved a boy who was trapped under a fallen tree branch. She lifted it off him despite being injured herself." Dr. Williams shook her head in amazement. "That explains the extent of her injuries. The physical strain of lifting something heavy would have put enormous pressure on her healing incision." As Alexander sat in the hospital waiting room, he found himself thinking about Elena Martinez in ways that surprised him. In his world, people were motivated by money, power, and personal gain. But this woman had risked everything for a child she had never met, expecting nothing in return. He thought about his own 8-year-old son Marcus, and how he would feel if a stranger had shown such courage to save his child's life. The depth of gratitude and respect he felt for Elena was unlike anything he had experienced before. When visiting hours began the next morning, Alexander arrived at the hospital with a large bouquet of flowers and a desire to properly thank the woman who had shown him what true heroism looked like. He had spent most of the night thinking about their brief encounter and Elena's selfless actions. Elena was awake but still pale when Alexander knocked softly on her hospital room door. She looked surprised to see him, clearly not having expected any visitors other than perhaps colleagues from work. "You," she said quietly, recognition dawning in her eyes. "You were there when I fell." "My name is Alexander King," he said, entering the room and setting the flowers on her bedside table. I wanted to make sure you were recovering well and to thank you properly for what you did yesterday. Elena studied his face, noting the genuine concern in his expression. You really don't need to thank me. I just did what anyone would do. Elena, Alexander said, pulling a chair closer to her bedside. What you did was extraordinary. You put a child's safety above your own health and well-being. That's not something anyone would do. That's something a truly exceptional person does. The sincerity in his voice made Elena feel unexpectedly emotional. She had spent so much of her life caring for others that she rarely experienced being cared for herself. How did you know I was injured? She asked. Alexander smiled slightly. I watched the whole thing happen. I was parked nearby when I heard the commotion. I saw how you moved, how you favored your side after lifting that branch. I could tell you were in pain, but you were so focused on making sure Tommy was okay that you ignored your own needs completely. Elena felt a flush of embarrassment. I thought no one had noticed. I noticed details, Alexander said simply. It's part of who I am, and what I noticed about you was remarkable. There was something in the way he spoke, something in his presence, that made Elena feel like she was being seen, truly seen for the first time in years. This man, whoever he was, had witnessed her at both her strongest and most vulnerable moments. The doctor said you'll need to take several weeks off work to properly heal, Alexander continued. Do you have family who can help take care of you? Elena shook her head. I don't have any family here. I moved to Seattle for my job. I'll manage fine on my own. The thought of this brave, caring woman recovering alone in her apartment troubled Alexander deeply. That's not acceptable, he said firmly. Excuse me? Elena was taken aback by his tone. I'm sorry, Alexander said, moderating his voice. I mean that someone who risked her life to save a child shouldn't have to recover from her injuries alone. Please let me help you. Elena was both touched and confused by his offer. I appreciate the thought, but I don't even know you. Why would you want to help a complete stranger? Alexander was quiet for a long moment, considering how to answer her question honestly without revealing too much about his own feelings and motivations. Because, he said finally, yesterday I watched you demonstrate more courage and compassion in 10 minutes than most people show in a lifetime, because you saved a child and nearly died doing it, and then tried to walk away like it was nothing. Because in my world, I'm surrounded by people who would step over someone in need to avoid getting their shoes dirty, and you're the opposite of that. Elena felt tears prick at her eyes. Your world? I'm in business, Alexander said simply, not wanting to overwhelm her with details about his wealth and influence. I deal with a lot of people who are motivated by self-interest. You're different. As they continued talking, Elena found herself drawn to this mysterious man who seemed genuinely concerned about her well-being. There was something powerful about his presence, something that suggested he was accustomed to being in control and getting what he wanted. But with her, he was gentle and respectful. Alexander, meanwhile, was experiencing something entirely new. In his business dealings, he was known for his ability to read people, to understand their motivations and weaknesses. But Elena puzzled him. She seemed to have no agenda, no angle, no desire for personal gain. She was simply and genuinely good. When visiting hours ended, Alexander reluctantly prepared to leave. Elena, I meant what I said about helping during your recovery. I know we've just met, but I'd like to make sure you have everything you need. Elena looked at this handsome, clearly successful man who was offering to help a stranger, and she felt something she hadn't felt in years. Hoped that perhaps she didn't have to face everything alone. I don't understand why you want to help me, she said honestly. Alexander paused at the door. Because heroes shouldn't have to suffer in silence, he said quietly, and because you deserve to be taken care of the same way you take care of others. After he left, Elena lay in her hospital bed thinking about Alexander King and his unexpected kindness. She had no idea that this chance encounter would change both of their lives forever, or that the man who had witnessed her moment of heroism and vulnerability was one of the most powerful figures in the city. All she knew was that for the first time in years she didn't feel completely alone in the world, and that feeling was both terrifying and wonderful. Elena spent 3 days in the hospital before being discharged with strict instructions to rest and avoid any strenuous activity for at least 6 weeks. True to his word, Alexander appeared every day during visiting hours, bringing books, flowers, and surprisingly engaging conversation. On the day of her discharge, Elena was surprised to find Alexander waiting with a private car service rather than expecting her to take a taxi home. "This is really too much," she protested as he helped her into the luxurious vehicle. "It's the least I can do," Alexander replied, settling into the seat beside her. "Besides, I wanted to make sure you got home safely." During the drive to her apartment, Elena learned more about the man who had become her unexpected guardian angel. Alexander was careful not to reveal the full extent of his wealth and influence, describing himself simply as someone who owned several businesses in the Seattle area. He talked about his love for the city, his concerns about urban development, and his passion for creating opportunities for others. What struck Elena most was how attentively he listened when she talked about her work at the children's hospital. He asked thoughtful questions about her patients, her challenges as a nurse, and her hopes for advancing pediatric care. It had been years since anyone had shown such genuine interest in her professional life. When they arrived at Elena's modest apartment building, Alexander insisted on walking her to her door and ensuring she had everything she needed. The contrast between his obvious wealth and sophistication and her simple living situation was stark, but he never made her feel self-conscious about it. "I've taken the liberty of arranging for a grocery delivery service to bring you meals while you're recovering," Alexander said as Elena unlocked her apartment door. "Alexander, you can't keep doing things like this," Elena protested, though she was touched by his thoughtfulness. "Yes, I can," he replied with a slight smile. "And I will. You saved a child's life and nearly died doing it. The least the world can do is make sure you're properly cared for while you heal." Over the following weeks, Alexander visited Elena regularly. Sometimes he brought dinner from high-end restaurants, claiming he had ordered too much for himself. Other times, he arrived with medical supplies or books he thought she might enjoy. Each visit lasted longer than the previous one, their conversations growing deeper and more personal. Elena found herself looking forward to these visits more than she cared to admit. Alexander was intelligent, thoughtful, and surprisingly funny when he let his guard down. He seemed genuinely interested in her thoughts and opinions, treating her as an intellectual equal despite their different backgrounds. What Elena didn't know was that Alexander was struggling with feelings he had never experienced before. In his business world, relationships were transactional, built on mutual benefit and clearly defined exchanges. But his connection with Elena was something entirely different. She asked for nothing, expected nothing, and gave freely of her time and attention. During one evening visit, Alexander arrived to find Elena looking upset. She had just received a call from the hospital informing her that her position might not be available when she returned due to budget cuts and restructuring. "I don't understand," she said, her voice shaky with emotion. "I've been there for 5 years. I have excellent performance reviews. How can they just eliminate my position?" Alexander felt anger rise in his chest. The idea that Elena might lose her job because of the injuries she sustained saving a child seemed profoundly unjust. "What exactly did they tell you?" he asked. Elena explained that the hospital was under financial pressure and was consolidating several departments. Her supervisor had suggested she might need to look for opportunities elsewhere as there might not be a place for her when her medical leave ended. "That's unacceptable," Alexander said firmly. "You're injured because you acted heroically. They should be protecting your position, not threatening it." "It's not their fault," Elena said, though her disappointment was evident. "Hospitals are businesses too. They have to make difficult decisions." Alexander was quiet for a long moment, his mind racing. He had connections throughout the Seattle medical community, business leaders who owed him favors, board members who respected his opinions. The idea of Elena suffering professionally because of her heroic actions was something he could not accept. "Elena, what if I told you there might be other opportunities available?" "Better opportunities? What do you mean?" she asked. Alexander chose his words carefully. "I know people in the medical field. I might be able to put you in touch with some opportunities that would be a better fit for someone with your skills and dedication." Aina looked at him suspiciously. "Alexander, exactly what kind of business are you in?" "You have a car service, you know people in medicine, you can afford to bring me dinner from expensive restaurants every night. I'm starting to think you're not just some regular businessman." Alexander realized he couldn't continue being vague about his background without seeming dishonest. "You're right. I haven't been completely forthcoming about my situation." "Your situation?" Elena asked. "I'm wealthy," Alexander said simply. "Very wealthy. I own King Development Group, among other businesses. I have significant influence in this city's medical, business, and philanthropic communities." Elena stared at him in shock. She had heard of King Development Group. Everyone in Seattle had. They were responsible for some of the city's most prominent building projects and charitable initiatives. Alexander King wasn't just wealthy, he was one of the most powerful men in the Pacific Northwest. "You're that Alexander King," she said quietly. "I am. Why didn't you tell me?" Alexander ran a hand through his hair, looking unusually vulnerable. "Because I wanted you to get to know me as a person, not as a title or a bank account. In my world, people's motivations change the moment they learn about my wealth. But you've never asked me for anything. You've never tried to use our friendship for personal gain. I didn't want that to change." Elena was quiet for several minutes processing this revelation. "So when you said you could help with job opportunities, I meant it. I could make a phone call and ensure you have a position at any hospital in the city. I could arrange for you to work at Seattle Children's in a better role with higher pay. I could even help you start your own practice if that's what you wanted." The offer was tempting, but something about it troubled Elena. "And what would you want in return?" Alexander looked hurt by the question. "Nothing. I would want nothing in return except to know that you're happy and financially secure." "People like you don't do things for nothing," Elena said, her nursing experience having taught her to be wary of offers that seemed too good to be true. "People like me," Alexander repeated, his voice growing colder. "What exactly do you think people like me are like?" Elena realized she had offended him. "I just meant that successful business people usually have reasons for their actions." "You're right," Alexander said, standing up from the couch where they had been sitting. "I do have reasons. I care about you. I admire you. I think you're the most genuinely good person I've ever met, and I want to see you succeed. If that makes me suspect in your eyes, then perhaps I've misjudged this situation." "Alexander, wait," Elena said as he moved toward the door. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to sound ungrateful. It's just, this is a lot to process. You're this incredibly powerful, wealthy man, and I'm just a nurse who got hurt helping a kid. I don't understand why you've been so kind to me." Alexander paused, his hand on the doorknob. "You're not just anything, Elena. You're extraordinary. And if you can't see that, then maybe I haven't done a good job of showing you." After he left, Elena sat alone in her apartment, overwhelmed by confusion and regret. She had managed to push away the one person who had shown her genuine kindness during one of the most difficult periods of her life. Meanwhile, Alexander drove through the city streets feeling frustrated and disappointed. He had hoped that Elena would see his offer of help as a gesture of care and respect, but instead she had viewed it with suspicion. Perhaps the gulf between their worlds was too vast to bridge. Over the next few days, Alexander didn't visit, and Elena found herself missing his presence more than she had expected. She realized that somewhere along the way she had begun to depend on his daily visits, his thoughtful conversation, and his reassuring presence. On Friday evening, Elena made a decision. She called the number Alexander had given her and left a voicemail asking if he would come to see her. She needed to apologize and tried to explain her reaction to his revelation about his identity. Alexander arrived within an hour, looking cautious but hopeful. "Thank you for coming," Elena said, inviting him into her apartment. "I owe you an apology." "You don't owe me anything," Alexander replied, though his tone was warmer than it had been during their last conversation. "Yes, I do. I reacted badly when you told me about your background and I hurt your feelings. That wasn't fair." Alexander sat down across from her, his expression softening. I understand why you were suspicious. In your position, I might have reacted the same way. The truth is, Elena continued, I've never had anyone in my life who wanted to take care of me the way you have these past weeks. I've always been the one doing the caring, the helping, the giving. When someone offers to help me, especially someone with your resources, my first instinct is to wonder what the catch is. There's no catch, Elena. There's just this feeling I have that you deserve better than what life has given you so far. Elena felt tears welling up in her eyes. Why do you care so much about what happens to me? Alexander was quiet for a long moment, struggling with how much to reveal about his feelings. Because when I watched you save that child, I saw something I didn't know still existed in the world. I saw someone who was willing to sacrifice everything for a stranger, expecting nothing in return. In my business, I deal with people all the time who wouldn't lift a finger to help someone unless there was something in it for them. You're the opposite of that. But surely you know other good people. You have family, friends. I have a son, Alexander said quietly. Marcus, he's 8 years old. And when I watched you save Tommy Richardson, all I could think about was how I would feel if someone showed that kind of courage to save Marcus. This was the first time Alexander had mentioned having a child, and Elena felt a new understanding dawning. Where is Marcus now? With his grandmother, my ex-wife and I divorced 3 years ago, and Marcus splits his time between us. She has him this week. Elena began to understand the loneliness she sometimes sensed beneath Alexander's confident exterior. You must miss him when he's not with you. I do. Being a single parent is challenging, especially when you're trying to balance work responsibilities with wanting to be present for your child. I can imagine I see single parents at the hospital all the time, trying to be everything to their children while dealing with their own stress and exhaustion. Alexander appreciated her understanding. Marcus is the most important thing in my life. When I saw you risk your own safety to save another parent's child, I felt like I understood something about you that I've never experienced with anyone else. Elena was beginning to see Alexander in a completely different light. He wasn't just a wealthy businessman making charitable gestures. He was a father who had witnessed someone protecting a child the way he would want someone to protect his own son. I'd like to meet Marcus sometime, Elena said softly. Alexander's face lit up with genuine joy. He would like you. He wants to be a doctor when he grows up because he wants to help sick kids. Like mother, like son? Elena asked. Actually, like the woman who inspired him, Alexander replied. When I told Marcus about what you did for Tommy, he was amazed. He's been asking about you ever since. The idea that her actions had inspired a child she had never met touched Elena deeply. You told him about me? I told him about a very brave nurse who got hurt helping another little boy. He's been worried about whether you're okay. Elena felt her heart swell with emotion. I'd love to meet him and let him know I'm recovering well. Alexander smiled. I was hoping you'd say that. He's been asking if we could visit the hospital to thank you properly. I told him you were recovering at home, and he suggested we should bring you soup. The image of an 8-year-old boy wanting to bring her soup made Elena laugh for the first time since her injury. That sounds perfect. As the evening progressed, Elena and Alexander talked more openly than they ever had before. Alexander shared stories about Marcus, his challenges as a single father, and his hopes for balancing his demanding career with being present for his son. Elena told him about her own childhood, her decision to become a nurse, and her dreams of eventually working in pediatric research. I have a confession, Alexander said as the evening was drawing to a close. I've been looking into the situation with your job at the hospital. Elena looked at him with surprise. What do you mean? I mean, I've been making some inquiries about why they're considering eliminating your position, and I've learned some things that might interest you. Such as the fact that the budget cuts they're claiming are necessary are actually the result of some poor financial decisions by the hospital administration, and that several board members are concerned about the way they're handling staff reductions. Elena wasn't sure how to feel about Alexander investigating her employment situation. What are you planning to do with that information? Nothing, unless you want me to. But I want you to know that you have options beyond just accepting whatever they decide to offer you. Elena realized that Alexander's wealth and influence could indeed solve her employment problems, but she also recognized that accepting his help would fundamentally change the nature of their relationship. "Can I ask you something?" Elena said. "Of course. If I weren't facing job problems, would you still be here? Would you still be visiting me, bringing me dinner, wanting to introduce me to your son?" Alexander understood what she was really asking. "Elena, I'm not here because you need help. I'm here because I care about you. The job situation just happens to be something I can actually do something about. But you understand why I might be hesitant to accept that kind of help? I do. And I want you to know that my feelings for you have nothing to do with what I can or can't do for you professionally." Elena felt her breath catch. "Your feelings for me?" Alexander realized he had revealed more than he had intended. "Elena, I think you know that what I feel for you goes beyond gratitude or admiration." "I'm not sure I do know that," Elena said quietly. Alexander moved closer to her on the couch. "Then let me be clear. I'm falling in love with you. I have been since the moment I watched you save that child and then try to walk away like it was nothing. I've never met anyone like you, and I don't want to lose the chance to see where this connection between us might lead." Elena felt her heart racing. She had sensed something developing between them, but hearing Alexander say it out loud made it real in a way that was both thrilling and terrifying. "Alexander, I care about you too, more than I should considering how recently we met. But I need you to understand that I can't be with someone who wants to solve all my problems for me. I need to maintain my independence, my sense of self-worth." "I understand that," Alexander replied, "and I respect it. But I also need you to understand that caring for the people I love is part of who I am. I don't want to control your life or make you dependent on me. I want to support you in achieving your own goals." Elena looked into his eyes and saw sincerity and vulnerability that surprised her. This powerful man was asking for her trust, offering his heart, and respecting her need for autonomy all at the same time. "I need time to think about all of this," Elena said. "The job situation, my feelings for you, what a relationship between us would even look like." "Take all the time you need," Alexander replied. "But Elena, please don't let fear of my wealth or influence prevent you from considering what we could have together. I'm not offering to buy your affection or solve your problems because I think you're incapable. I'm offering because I care about you and I want to see you happy." After Alexander left that night, Elena lay awake thinking about everything that had happened since the morning she had saved Tommy Richardson. Her simple act of heroism had led to meeting a man who challenged everything she thought she knew about love. She thought about Marcus, the 8-year-old boy who wanted to bring her soup, and Alexander, the powerful businessman who had seen her at her most vulnerable and chosen to stay by her side. She thought about the job she might lose and the opportunities Alexander could provide, and she wondered if it was possible to accept help from someone you loved without losing yourself in the process. Most of all, she thought about the way Alexander had looked at her when he said he was falling in love with her, and she admitted to herself that she was falling in love with him too. The question was whether love would be enough to bridge the gap between their very different worlds. Elena spent the weekend wrestling with her feelings and the difficult decisions ahead of her. On Monday morning, she made 2 important phone calls. The first was to her supervisor at the hospital, requesting a meeting to discuss her employment status. The second was to Alexander, asking if she could meet Marcus that afternoon. Alexander's voice brightened considerably when she made the request. "He'll be thrilled. I'll pick you up at 2 if that works for you." When Alexander arrived with Marcus, Elena was immediately charmed by the 8-year-old boy who looked so much like his father. Marcus had Alexander's dark hair and intense blue eyes, but where Alexander often appeared serious and controlled, Marcus was animated and openly curious.
"Are you the nurse who saved Tommy?" Marcus asked the moment he met Elena.
"I am," Elena replied, kneeling down to his level, "and you must be Marcus. Your dad has told me so much about you." Marcus beamed with pride. "Dad said you got hurt helping Tommy, but you didn't tell anyone because you wanted to make sure Tommy was okay first." "That's right," Elena confirmed, touched by the boy's understanding. That was really brave, Marcus said seriously. Dad says brave people don't think about themselves first. They think about helping other people. Elena glanced up at Alexander, who was watching their interaction with obvious emotion. Your dad is very smart. He's the smartest person I know, Marcus agreed. Well, except maybe you. Dad says you're really smart too, and that you take care of sick kids like me if I ever got hurt. The afternoon passed quickly as Elena and Marcus talked about his school, his friends, and his dream of becoming a doctor. Elena found herself falling in love not just with Marcus's enthusiasm and intelligence, but with the way Alexander was with his son. He was patient, attentive, and genuinely interested in Marcus's thoughts and opinions. When Marcus asked if Elena would like to see his drawings of doctors and nurses, Alexander suggested they go to his house where Marcus had his art supplies. Elena agreed, curious to see where they lived. Alexander's home was exactly what Elena had expected. Elegant, spacious, and obviously expensive, but also surprisingly warm and clearly designed around Marcus's needs. There were family photos throughout the house, children's books on every surface, and art projects displayed prominently on the refrigerator. This is my room, Marcus announced, pulling Elena down the hallway to show her his bedroom. The room was filled with books about science and medicine, models of the human body, and drawings of hospitals and medical equipment. Wow, Elena said, genuinely impressed by the sophisticated medical drawings an 8-year-old had created. These are incredible, Marcus. You really understand how the human body works. Dad got me books about anatomy because I wanted to know how doctors fix people when they're broken, Marcus explained. Like how they fixed you after you got hurt, helping Tommy. Elena felt her throat tighten with emotion. This child's compassion and intelligence were remarkable, and she could see so much of Alexander in him. While Marcus was showing Elena his collection of medical textbooks written for children, seeing Elena with his son felt natural in a way that surprised him. Marcus had taken to her immediately, and Elena seemed genuinely engaged with his interests and questions. Elena, Marcus said suddenly, are you going to be my dad's girlfriend? Both Elena and Alexander were caught off guard by the direct question. Marcus, Alexander said gently, that's not really something for you to worry about. But I like her, Marcus announced. And you smile differently when you talk about her than you do when you talk about other grown-ups. Elena looked at Alexander, who appeared both embarrassed and touched by his son's observation. Your dad and I are good friends, Elena told Marcus. We're still getting to know each other, but you like each other, right? Marcus persisted. Like each other? Alexander couldn't help but laugh at his son's persistence. Marcus, why don't you show Elena your telescope while I start dinner? As Alexander prepared dinner in the kitchen, he could hear Elena and Marcus talking and laughing from Marcus's room. The sound of their easy conversation filled him with a contentment he hadn't experienced since his divorce. During dinner, Marcus dominated the conversation with stories about school and questions about Elena's work with children. Elena answered his questions patiently and thoughtfully, treating him like an intelligent person rather than just a child. Elena, Marcus said as they were finishing their meal, if you and Dad got married, would you still be a nurse? Marcus, Alexander said, his face flushing with embarrassment. What? I'm just asking, Marcus replied innocently. Elena found the boy's directness refreshing. Well, Marcus, that's a hypothetical question because your dad and I aren't getting married. But if I were to ever get married to anyone, I would definitely still want to be a nurse. Taking care of sick children is very important to me. Good, Marcus said with satisfaction. Because you're really good at it, and kids need people like you to help them get better. After dinner, as Elena helped clean up while Marcus worked on homework, she and Alexander had a few moments to talk privately. I'm sorry about the marriage questions. He's been asking a lot of questions about relationships lately. It's fine, Elena replied. He's processing his feelings about us spending time together. That's natural. How do you feel about it? About him, I mean. Elena smiled. He's wonderful, Alexander. He's intelligent, kind, and obviously adores you. You've done an amazing job raising him. Thank you, Alexander said, clearly pleased by her assessment. His opinion of you matters to me. If he hadn't liked you, but he does, Elena finished. The question is, where do we go from here? Before Alexander could answer, they were interrupted by Marcus calling from the living room. "Dad! Elena, come see! There's a news story about Tommy." They hurried to the living room where Marcus was pointing at the television. A local news anchor was reporting on a ceremony at Seattle Children's Hospital where Tommy Richardson was being honored for his bravery during his recovery from the playground accident. Tommy Richardson, age 8, has shown remarkable courage during his recovery from injuries sustained when a tree branch fell on him at Riverside Park, the anchor was saying. Hospital staff report that Tommy has been telling everyone about the brave nurse who saved his life, though the identity of that nurse remains unknown. Elena watched in amazement as Tommy appeared on screen with his parents, his leg in a brace but otherwise looking healthy and happy. "She was the bravest person ever," Tommy was saying to the reporter. "She lifted that big branch off me even though she was hurt too. I want to find her and say thank you." Sarah Richardson, Tommy's mother, spoke next. "We've been trying to locate the woman who saved our son. We know she was injured helping Tommy and had to go to the hospital, but we don't know her name or how to reach her. If she's watching this, we want her to know that our family will be forever grateful." Elena felt tears streaming down her face as she watched the family she had helped, knowing they were looking for her. "Elena," Marcus said excitedly, "that's you. You're the nurse they're talking about." "It is," Elena confirmed, her voice thick with emotion. Alexander put his arm around her shoulders. "How do you feel about them looking for you?" I don't know." "I never expected this kind of attention. I just did what anyone would do." "No," Alexander said firmly. "You did what a hero would do, and now that family wants to thank their hero properly." Marcus was practically bouncing with excitement. "Elena, you're famous. You're on TV." Over the following days, the story gained momentum. Local news stations picked up Tommy's plea to find the mysterious nurse who had saved his life. Social media users began sharing the story, asking people to help identify Elena. Elena watched all of this unfold with mixed feelings. She was deeply touched by the Richardson family's gratitude, but she was also uncomfortable with the attention. She had never sought recognition for her actions. Alexander, meanwhile, was dealing with his own complex emotions. He was proud of Elena and wanted the world to know about her heroism. At the same time, he was protective of her privacy and concerned about how public attention might affect their developing relationship. The situation came to a head when Marcus, who had been following the news coverage with fascination, made an announcement at breakfast. "Dad, I think Elena should call Tommy's family. They really want to thank her, and she deserves to be thanked." "It's Elena's decision," Alexander replied, though he privately agreed with his son. "Elena," Marcus said seriously, "if I saved someone and they wanted to thank me, wouldn't you want me to let them?" Elena realized that an 8-year-old had just made the most compelling argument she had heard yet for revealing her identity to the Richardson family. "You know what, Marcus? You're absolutely right," she said, making a decision that surprised even herself. "I should let them thank me properly." That afternoon, Elena called the hospital and asked them to put her in touch with the Richardson family. Within hours, she received a call from Sarah Richardson, who was overwhelmed with gratitude and emotion. "We've been praying we'd find you," Sarah said through tears. "Tommy talks about you every day. He's been so worried about whether you're okay." They arranged to meet at the hospital the following day. Elena asked Alexander if he would come with her for moral support, and he agreed immediately. When Elena walked into Tommy's hospital room the next day, the boy's face lit up with joy and relief. "You're okay," Tommy exclaimed, trying to get out of bed before his mother gently restrained him. "I'm okay," Elena confirmed, sitting on the edge of his bed. "And I can see that you're doing much better too." "My leg is almost all better," Tommy said proudly. "The doctor said it's going to be perfectly fine." Sarah Richardson could barely contain her emotions as she thanked Elena repeatedly. "We can never repay you for what you did. You risked your own life to save our son. Seeing Tommy healthy and happy is all the repayment I need," Elena replied sincerely. Tommy's father, Michael Richardson, shook hands with both Elena and Alexander. "We heard you were injured helping Tommy. Are you fully recovered?" "I'm getting there," Elena said. "It was worth it to know Tommy is okay." As they visited with the Richardson family, Alexander watched Elena interact with Tommy and his parents. He saw the genuine joy she felt in Tommy's recovery, the natural way she related to the child, and the gracious manner in which she accepted the family's gratitude. When Tommy asked Elena if she would visit him again, she promised she would. When Sarah Richardson asked if there was anything they could do for Elena in return, she politely declined, saying that Tommy's recovery was gift enough. After they left the hospital, Alexander and Elena walked quietly through the parking garage. "How do you feel?" Alexander asked. "Good," Elena replied. "Really good." Marcus was right. "It felt wonderful to let them thank me properly. You were amazing in there," Alexander said. "The way you were with Tommy, with his parents, you have such a natural gift for bringing comfort to people." Elena felt a warmth spread through her chest at his words. "Thank you." "Elena, I need to tell you something," Alexander said, stopping beside his car. "Watching you with my son yesterday and seeing you with Tommy today has made me more certain than ever about my feelings for you." Elena looked into his eyes and saw the same vulnerability and sincerity she had come to associate with the man behind the powerful public persona. "I love you," Alexander continued. "I love your courage, your compassion, your intelligence, and your strength. I love the way you are with Marcus, and I love the way you make me want to be a better man." Elena felt her heart soar with joy and fear in equal measure. "Alexander, I love you too. I've been trying not to because our lives are so different, because I was afraid of losing myself in your world. But I can't help how I feel about you." Alexander stepped closer to her. "You won't lose yourself. If anything, being with you has helped me find parts of myself I had forgotten existed." "What about the practical things?" Elena asked. "My job, your responsibilities, Marcus, the difference in our financial situations? We'll figure it out together," Alexander replied. "I've spoken with the board at Seattle Children's Hospital. They're creating a new position in pediatric care coordination that would be perfect for your skills and experience. It comes with a significant salary increase and opportunities for advancement." Elena looked at him suspiciously. "Alexander, I didn't create the job for you." He said quickly, "I simply made sure the board knew that an exceptional pediatric nurse was going to be available soon and suggested they might want to consider expanding their program to include someone with your qualifications." "And they just happened to create this perfect position?" "They created a position that matches your skills because they recognize your value. The fact that it's perfect for you is just good planning on their part." Elena realized that Alexander had found a way to help her professionally without making her feel like charity case or a kept woman. The position he described was one she would have to earn and succeed in based on her own merits. "I love you," Elena said again, this time with certainty and joy rather than fear. Alexander pulled her into his arms and kissed her with all the passion and tenderness he had been holding back for weeks. When they broke apart, Elena smiled up at him. "So what happens now?" "Now we take it one day at a time," Alexander replied. "We see where this love takes us, and we build something beautiful together." "What about Marcus? How do we make sure he's comfortable with us being together?" Alexander laughed. "I think Marcus is already planning our wedding. He asked me this morning if you would help him with his science project next week." "Did he really?" "He did. He also asked if you would teach him how to take care of people the way you took care of Tommy." Ela felt tears of happiness in her eyes. "I would love to do both of those things." 6 months later, Elena was settled into her new position at Seattle Children's Hospital, where she was making significant contributions to pediatric care protocols. Her relationship with Alexander had deepened and strengthened, and she had become an integral part of Marcus's life. The three of them had become a family in every way that mattered. Elena brought warmth and nurturing to Alexander's sometimes rigid world, while Alexander provided Elena with the support and security she had never allowed herself to want. Marcus thrived with Elena's attention and care, and he delighted in having someone who understood his scientific interests and medical aspirations. On a warm spring evening, exactly 1 year after the day Elena had saved Tommy Richardson, Alexander proposed to Elena in Riverside Park near the playground where they had first encountered each other. Marcus was there to witness the proposal, along with Tommy Richardson and his family who had become close friends. Elena Martinez, Alexander said, kneeling beside the tree where Tommy had been trapped, "You saved more than just a child's life that day. You saved mine too. Will you marry me?" Elena looked around at the faces of the people who had become her chosen family. Alexander, whose love had transformed her understanding of what a partnership could be. Marcus, who had taught her the joy of nurturing a brilliant young mind. And Tommy, whose grateful family had become dear friends. "Yes," Elena said through happy tears. "Yes, I will marry you." As Alexander slipped the ring onto her finger, Elena reflected on how one moment of heroism had led to a lifetime of love. She had concealed her wound and suffered in silence, never knowing that the right person was watching, ready to care for her the way she had always cared for others. Marcus cheered and hugged both of them while Tommy clapped excitedly from his wheelchair where he sat with his parents. The boy's leg had healed completely, but he still used the chair sometimes when he got tired, a small reminder of the day that had brought all of these people together. "So when's the wedding?" Marcus asked practically. "And can Tommy be in it? And can Elena wear a really pretty dress?" Elena and Alexander laughed as they were bombarded with wedding planning questions from an 8-year-old and his enthusiastic friend. "We'll plan it together," Elena told Marcus. "All of us? Even me?" Tommy asks hopefully. "Especially you," Elena replied. "After all, none of this would have happened without you." As the sun set over Riverside Park, Elena King-to-be held the hands of the two most important males in her life and marveled at how an act of selfless heroism had led her to discover that sometimes the greatest reward for saving someone else's life is finding your own purpose in the process. The wound she had concealed had healed completely, but the love that had grown from Alexander witnessing her pain and courage would last forever. She had learned that true strength sometimes meant allowing others to care for you, and that the greatest heroes are often the ones who suffer in silence until the right person comes along to share their burden. In saving Tommy Richardson, Elena Martinez had unknowingly saved herself, finding not just love but a family, a future, and the understanding that heroism comes in many forms, including the courage to accept help, to trust in love, and to believe that you deserve to be cared for with the same devotion you show to others.